Hello and welcome to another episode of the Pre-Chiro podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Ben Glass, and today we're making a professional chiropractor connection out in Portugal with Dr. Laurence Tham. Can you introduce yourself, Dr. Laurence, and just give us some context as to where you were at when you decided you wanted to become a chiropractor?
Sure. My name is Laurence Tham, and this is the first interview I've ever done from Portugal. So, and hearing someone say that, that's actually pretty fun. I've obviously just moved to Portugal. So I graduated about 20 years ago from CMCC, and moved to Australia actually 20 years ago, just after I graduated, and been in Australia for 20 years practicing there, and then moved to Portugal 4 weeks ago, and I'm here now. Your question was, how did I start thinking about chiropractic? It's kind of an interesting journey. My mother, who actually passed away 1 year ago today, was a foot reflexologist, and when I was growing up, so she was really into more of the alternative kind of way of living in terms of medicine, and so. But I've always had this insatiable desire to really kind of want to become a doctor. I don't know, like it was when I was a kid, and so blending those two in, like knowing that I don't typically go see doctors, but I wanted to become a doctor, and because I wanted to help people. I wanted to be in a profession to help people. Kind of coincided around the time around at the end of high school, or maybe when I went to university. I went to University of Waterloo studying kinesiology and human movements, and was going to move towards that sports arena type of thing. And I started I seen chiropractors off and on through my teenage years, and then my thinking with going to chiropractic was that I love sports. I loved sort of helping people, and like I can do all of this together in one spot, like a physio, but in better even. So that's when I kind of started exploring chiropractic as an option. Followed around someone who went to national in Chicago and Waterloo, and just sort of seeing what he did, and he made me do ultrasounds and do all that stuff, and just saw how he practiced. He sent me to a seminar in Toronto, and my very first chiropractic seminar, and it was Jerry Clum, and Jerry was speaking there, and I was, listening to him. And I'm like, this is not what I kind of signed. Like, I don't think this was what chiropractic was for me. Like, it was just a two different concept. But I was already engaged to kind of signing up to go to chiropractic college. I applied to like three different schools. If I wasn't going to get into Toronto, I'm moving to like Chicago, or I think NYCC at the time, and even LA I was looking at. And so when I got into chiropractic college and CMCC, I got in, and that's when I really started discovering that chiropractic was very different than what I imagined it to be. Not good or bad, it was different. And yeah, so it's been fun, and it's funny. Like, I think about maybe 15 years later, I got a chance to speak on stage with Jerry at New Zealand Chiropractic College, and I remember talking to him like, Jerry, you're my first chiropractic speaker, and it was just really cool to kind of savor that moment, to know, like, the impact, and what BJ said, you never know how far reaching. It's like his words made an impact in my life, to become the chiropractor I am, obviously influenced by so many different people too as well.
Mhm. And so many of the words that you're going to be sharing today, I would love for you to think about the 15, 17, 19-year-old version of yourself who's really forming their vision for their lives, and they're not super clear as to the path they're going to take. Maybe they're thinking kinesiology. What was it for you that attracted you to kinesiology? What were you up to in high school? What were you up to in middle school? How did you identify so that it made sense to become a kinesiology major? And then when you were in kinesiology, was there really any presence of chiropractic? Like, how did it show up on your radar?
No.
Because it tends to be that you have to step outside of the program to find it for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's kind of go start with high school. So during those years, my advice to you, my advice for most people, is still to the same thing on how I did it, which is find what you're interested in. Like, that's the starting point, right? And forget about the idea of a career. That's my advice. Like, I think, I got a 13-year-old and an 11-year-old, and I was literally speaking to my daughter about this yesterday. It's like, what I want for you right now in her life, and she's 13, turning 14 this year, and she's at this stage of like, she's an insatiable learner. She just loves learning. Like photography, she'll just learn, and then she'll like go to piano and just learns, and then she just dives into it. And I'm like, that's perfect. I want you to explore all of these things. But at the same time, like, like at some point in your life, like in the future, not now, in some point in your life, you're gonna have to make a choice. And the tough choice of like, I need to dive deeper into, I need to be a master at some of these things. I think when you're 17, 18, I know you're not gonna be a master at anything, but you've lived long enough, okay, that you kind of know what you're interested in. You don't have to know, like, I think the biggest mistake I think in society is that forcing the kid to decide on, like, this has to be your career. I think that comes from like my generation, my parents' generation, like our parents' generation, that comes like, you go to get a job, get a career, and you stay there for like 20, 30 years of your life. Okay. I think that's gone now. Like it's well gone. Like people, if they stay for 2 years, that's pretty good, big deal. And so I think that my advice is there is when you're, 15, 16, 17, it's like, what do you what do you enjoy doing? Like what when you go to I listened to DeMartini when I was a long time ago when I was through school, and one of the things he said, when you will go into a bookstore, what section of the bookstore you go to, right? If you go you turn on Netflix, like what kind of genre do you listen to? You go into like their thriller or horror, or do you move to like sport documentaries or like nature? Like what attracts you? And I think those are clues, right? The things that you naturally are attracted to, not forced to by your parents or anything. But by then, that's why I think you sort of have this inkling of like, this is what I kind of interested in. But you need to take it to a higher level though. Higher level meaning like, don't go, oh, I love soccer and I must be a soccer thing. No, no, like maybe it's about sport. So like soccer falls under sport, right? Or maybe it's about team sport, right? So it's like higher level, overarching. What are some of the things? And I kind of put into like a Venn diagram, I guess, like put them in circles and go, what could be possible areas of things I could do that falls within that circle? For me, it was sport. I really enjoy sport. I was never a gifted athlete. I never got past any, like, I didn't go into any varsity things or anything. I saw the varsity swim thing, but I was never great at anything. But I enjoyed sport. I love something about sport. I still do to this day. I enjoyed helping people. As I mentioned, I just love serving people. And there's just something in me that I feel like I want to do something, and I want to be a teacher. I want to teach. And those three combination of things kind of led me to physiotherapy. I think I want to become physio. I didn't get in because I didn't have with like a 92. I still couldn't get in. Got rejected in the University of Toronto. So, but I applied for kinesiology, and because I felt like there was something there with human movement, there was some sort of sport component to it, and I just went there. Now, what I've learned going through that process is going through that one door allows me to see multiple doors in front of me. Okay, you go through that kinesiology door, there's three other options. I went actually down the ergonomics route, so I went down the ergonomics route. And I think what people fail to recognize, like even if you don't know what you want to do, go do something. Open that door, and there will be three more doors behind it. And go through each one of those. And if you don't like it, come out of that door and go try a different door, right? But one of these doors is gonna go, oh, I really like that door. And then when you open that door, there's be another three doors open, and then you just keep going. And that's how I kind of came with chiropractic. It was, to be honest, it was like just going to see a chiropractor and then recognize I'm like, this is a possible career. And for me, it was actually about the funny thing is about leverage. For me, it was like I was heading down a path to become an ergonomist, which means I work for like companies like Boeing or Honda or like one of those companies. And I can see myself, I would have a career in that. It would be a salary type of job, work 9 to 5, work for a company and corporation. And I actually did those jobs. And when University of Waterloo, I went co-op. So like I can do 4 months of university and 4 months of work. So I worked in all these companies and worked for General Electric and all stuff. And then I realized I'm like, but then my life is capped at 9 to 5 and a capped salary. So this is where I lean on my personality. My personality has always been about freedom. I didn't know that at the time. Reflecting back 20 years, later, like, yes, but now I'm thinking, no, I really crave like autonomy, which means like I get to control my destiny. And the thought of being a chiropractor or someone like a chiropractor where I get to run my own business, or the possibility of running my own business, I get to dictate my own hours. I get to cap like the amount of money I can make or my salary or my lifestyle I want is really dependent on how much effort I put into it. Whereas in this career, it's kind of like corporation ladder. And I felt that there was a cap at some point. So that's when I started looking into chiropractic, and that's how I kind of discovered it. And I was like, oh, and then from that door, like, as I mentioned, you start to discover. And when I started to discover what I thought chiropractic was, I opened another door, realizing that chiropractic is much more than that. It's way more about lifestyle and choice and freedom, and also like just the whole model of just like a whole complete thing that I didn't even know going in. Now has really kind of opened many doors along that path. So I hope, I know it's a long answer, but I hope that kind of helps the context of how I made my decision through my path to get to where
And
I am
as
now.
we keep going through this interview, we appreciate the long answers, because a lot of what this energy that I'm trying to bring to the podcast is like the student that comes up to you after they hear you speak and gets to ask additional questions that you might not have enough time to fully answer.
Yep.
So that's the energy here, and that answer was directed at somebody at multiple stages. I would love for you to talk about somebody who's already walked through one door. Maybe they're a massage therapist, a personal trainer, a yoga teacher, a life coach, a health coach, and speak to them where they're at right there. I'm just curious how you would introduce the idea of becoming a chiropractor to somebody at that stage.
Sure. I think oftentimes like this stage could be it just has no age limit now, right? Because you could be 20 years old, you could be 30, you could be 40. And to be honest with you, I'm going through multiple doors myself. I'm exploring where my next level, where I'm going to be all the time. Like I said, going back to the career advice I gave you, there is no such thing as a career. I think my career is what I make of it. You know, and one of the things I kind of look at is, and I'll come back to your question, which is, someone taught me about, how I identify myself. And most people say, like I'm a chiropractor. Okay, like that, but that limits me, right? And where someone he recommended is like, no, you're more like an octopus, right? Where you're saying, I'm Laurence Tam, who happens to be a chiropractor, but I'm also a father, I'm a husband, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a coach. Like all these things are like the tentacles of who I am, but the essence of me is Laurence Tam. And I felt that that was one of the most brilliant way of looking at life. And if you're watching this or listening to this, you are who you are. You're the head of the octopus, and that comes from my good friend James Ton. I want to make sure I give him credit for it. I was through a walk in Dublin where we just said like these tentacles are the expression of who you are, right? So when you go into massage therapy or when you go into physiotherapy or whatever career, whatever path you went on, you chose that path for a reason, and that path usually kind of gives you some ideas. It's going to give you signals, and the signals could be good or bad, and you shouldn't judge it as being good or bad, but it gives you signals. Like it gives you signals like, wow, I like this component, but I hate this part. I enjoy this part, and it gives you signals of like what do you like and what you explore. And this is what I mean by going through that door. Going through the door means you're just taking an opportunity and just trying to gather more information. But isn't that what life is about? Like we're just like I'm here in Portugal in 4 weeks. I don't know if this is going to be my forever place, right? Like, I don't know. I've moved so many times in my life. I don't know if this is right for my family, but I'm not here permanently. I'm just here for 2 years, 1 to 2 years, and now explore. I have options. I got a couple of passports. I'm a Canadian. I'm an Australian. Like, I may have to go back to Canada. I may go back. I don't know. But that's the same thing in life. I think I think the problem is when as soon as you kind of lock yourself into like one thing, I am this, no matter what age, I think that's when you stop learning and you stop growing because it's hard to admit to yourself to go, if you've always said like, I'm going to be a massage therapist and you stick with that path, you tell everybody I'm a massage therapist. And all of a sudden, like you find out like, that's not the best part. It's hard to rationalize your identity within yourself because you told yourself for 20 years, that's how you have to be. So I'll give you an example. I told myself I was going to practice till the day I die, right? Until I was 100 years old, I'm still going to practice. My ideal life would be, I know it's morbid, it's like, I'll go and practice, see my regular patients in the morning, and then, I just pass on right in the afternoon. Like that's the idea when I've graduated. And that was a really hard identity to shift from when I got to a point in my life and going, I've done everything I could in chiropractic as a practitioner. That was about 8 years ago. And I would really wrestled with that. I wrestled that for, several years. And then got to a point I'm like, no, I think I need to take a sabbatical. I need to take some time away. And when I took that sabbatical, a month into that sabbatical, I was taking a 6-month sabbatical off from practice, found an associate for my business. And then I took a month off. I'm like, no, I'm done. And I never thought I would say that, but I had to rationalize with my identity going, I'm no longer a chiropractor as a sense of the word. I'll always be a chiropractor, but I'm sure you guys get what I mean. But it's like there's a sense of like identity shift. I'm like, I got to be okay that may not be the rest of my life, and that's exactly how it happened. I never went back to practice, and that's the career path that I went to.
Can you reflect on the experience and practice that you had, that you created for yourself? Tease out the details of maybe what a person would experience when they came to see you, what your clinic felt like, how it was designed, how it was set up, how many people worked there, what kinds of engagement you had with the community that really helped you target a specific audience or connect with a specific demographic. I'm just curious if you could reflect back, even though it's been a couple of years.
Yeah, like my practice was designed, you interviewed Jamie Richards recently, you mentioned, and Jamie and I went to school together. And so we used to have these, I don't know, I can't remember if it was weekly or, yeah, it was weekly. We had weekly meetings and we used to sit in the cafeteria and we design our life. This is probably about third year or fourth year, and we just designed our life. We mapped it out exactly how, what those goals are. I mean, it was like, it's working 3 days a week. I wrote down, like, I think I want to see 300 patients a week. I'll be right by ocean. I lived in Toronto, by the way. I had no plans of moving to Australia. I don't know. I was just like, this is what I wanted. And I kind of manifested that. The practice I practiced, I wanted a family-based kind of practice. I wanted to help people. I wanted to help as many people as I possibly could. So it was one of those things that, but the key element, I learned this from Arnaud Bernier. Okay, so I met Arnaud in my fourth year in practice. Fourth year in school, and he changed my direction of how I thought about practice. And he introduced me to this book, which I can't remember at the top of my head, but it was by Howard Schultz, who is the founder of Starbucks, right? And he talked about this the cafe. And how Starbucks was like the second place. The third place. And the third place is the idea because everybody has two places, their home and their work. And Starbucks was created as being the third place, which is like the third, somewhere between home and work. You had to go from home to Starbucks to go to work, or work to Starbucks to come home. And that sunk into my idea, my consciousness at that time as a student in my last year of CMCC, was thinking, creating a third place. What if the practice I created was a third place for people, right? They come before they go to work, or they leave from work and they come to me and then go back home. So what I want to do is create an experience, but I'm also entangled in my head. I'm like, but I want to see as many people as possible. So there has to be some speed element. So instead of like compromising that, what I did was I still saw volume, but at the same time, also want to create an experience. That was really important to me, creating an experience for my patients, which means that I recognized, and something I had to figure out was the experience as a chiro with a little bit of ego at the time is we all think it's about us. It's about our adjustment. What I recognized, after a couple of years of realizing it's not about me. It's not about the adjustment. It's about the experience. So the experience is really from the moment you walk in the door, actually probably the moment you contact my office, right? To the moment you walk in the door, and the waiting room time, like the experience with you with my CAs, I'm just part of the experience. I'm not the experience. I'm just part of the experience. I want to be part of. Sure, most people see me as the main course, but there's still dessert and appetizer before and dessert afterwards, right? So I wanted to create an environment as best as possible to create that experience, and that's through various elements. It's through the visual element. What do you see when you first walk in? How does it make you feel? Now, I think this is a match between what, me as a person, what I like aesthetically, or what I think also a lot of people like, but also matches their context. So I didn't want to build a practice. I didn't want to build a clinic. I didn't want to build a doctor's office. I want to try to remove myself as far away from that as possible, because for me, I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm just saying for me was like, I wanted a third place. I want people, remember, the third place is the concept. So which means I want someone to be able to come here and feel comfortable. They can relax after work. They just spend like 8-9 hours like working hard. I want them to feel like they can chill out, right? I want them to feel like they can chill out, relax, and just get the adjustment they need to make sure they feel amazing. So visually, has to be like, I try to make it as modern as possible. I want them to feel, it's great and it's prestigious. Prestige without like being too pretentious, right? So the auditory, the sound, the music we chose. I chose music that was, because I had to, working on volumes, I want to make sure that they have some upbeat, right? You know, most people want to put in like massage type of music in, which is great if you're having a massage, right? But that slows you down. It slows me down as a chiropractor, slows people down. So I have to kind of create more upbeat music. So I used to go to Bali a lot of Buddha bar music, nice, gentle. There's a tempo to it. Like it's fun. It's like a cafe kind of music, but it's like there's up tempo, like there's a beat, it's chilled out vibe, but yet there's a beat. So like from an auditory perspective, visual, auditory, kinesthetic, the touch, obviously the adjustment, but then what else? Like maybe the chair that you're sitting on, the texture of the chair. Is it nice? Is it just a plastic chair? No, it's like I put a couch in my office, in my room, because I want them to feel. Was it more expensive? Hell yeah, right? Does it get worn? Yeah, so you have to replace it, having a nice carpet, having a nice environment. So all of these things matter. Smell, candles, like I'm trying to go through that all the little. So I'm going through the visual, the auditory, the kinesthetic, and the olfactory. All of these things matter, and the combination of that creates the experience. And obviously now the last is also how you and your team present themselves. Are they friendly? Do they remember their names? How do they feel when they walk in, and how do they feel when they walk out? What's the emotion they feel? All of these things, combinations, are the one percenters. That's what I coach my clients on. It's like, you got to work on the one percenters. They don't have direct benefit like a Facebook ad and going, if I spend this much money, I'm going to get this one. No, these are like things that it's about branding. It's about you doing those things that have no idea whether it has an effect on someone, but the combination of those 1% all together makes a massive difference.
Amazing. Yes, thank you so much for walking us through the five senses and just taking in the environment that you're entering. So just to keep building context for you in this project, basically you got the foundations course, teaches you about chiropractic. The inner state is your inner scientist, thinker, artist, teacher, entrepreneur, which is the skill pathway development, exploration, just showing people that if you want to go this pathway, these are all the different skills, these are all the different directions, these are all the different people that can teach you those skills, and the resources that have been created by people in the profession to help you develop those skills. And then the third part is the apprentice. So it's going in and really taking in those five senses and a number of other things, right? From the paperwork to the marketing side to the adjustments, to receiving the adjustments, to observing the adjustments, to talking to people about the adjustments. Then there's the fourth stage where we're encouraging students, pre-chiro students before school, to start their own pre-chiro club, to have an entrepreneurial venture. I'm curious if you work with anybody that's just getting out of school, or if you could even creatively talk to somebody who's in undergrad or high school and has gone through these stages and is now experienced enough and clear enough on chiropractic that they want to share it with their college campus or their environment that they're going to school in or developing in. How would you encourage them to maybe start their club? I don't know if you started any clubs, or I'm sure you started many different things, but if you could kind of just give some words of encouragement to somebody who's starting a pre-chiro club, how do they connect to the guidance counselors, to the teachers, to their fellow students? How do they host workshops or events, so on and so forth?
One of the things I recognized really early on, when I was in school, is that this is an environment for me to play in, and it was definitely more. I mean, everybody says this is that doesn't really become clear until you actually left it, because you got to think about this. Like when you're in school, you're in a perfect environment where you have nothing to lose, right? You have like all your friends who are pursuing something similar. Now, you might be all going to different paths and different ideas and different philosophies, and that's fine. But you know what? Those challenges that I had, with other students about and having those debates in those classrooms, they were the best. As aggravating or as irritating they were, it really solidified my own beliefs, or it actually helped me understand the other side and made me who I was when I graduated. And I'm glad for that, because when I graduated, I thought I knew everything and I realized I knew nothing, right? And so if I didn't go through those 4 years of like going through with other people, then I would have to do that afterwards. But then now I'm doing it by myself, which means it's never good, because now it's just like I'll fall. Most likely you never do it, so therefore you never go through that chance. So I really appreciated those years, and I think that the 4 or 5 years, depending on what school you go to, those years are your formative years to really find out about yourself. And I think you have a perfect opportunity, the perfect ground of where the people, the right people, the people are right there, the environment is right there, and the hunger is right there. And because of those combination of those things allows you the opportunity to really test those doors, as I mentioned before, right? I was the president of WCCS, which is the World Congress of Chiropractic Students. During my tenure there, I was there for, I think I was president for 1 or 2 years. I joined the club first. I got to go to England and and see like all these chiropractic colleges, students coming from all around the world. And I went to England. And the next year was in Toronto, which I hosted. Got all these people. So I then had to figure out how to organize. Like I think it was like 150 students. How do I get 150 students to do work during the day and then go partying at nighttime and like like just organization skills that you just, I didn't think I had, I learned so much from. And the next year, and the reason there's a story, the reason for that story, next year I went to Australia, went to Sydney, went to Macquarie, and they hosted it. And that was when I went there for a week. It was actually just literally right after my wedding honeymoon. I went from Hawaii. My wife went home to Toronto. I went straight to Sydney, went there and went, holy crap, this is a beautiful place. And when I went back and I told my wife, like, we don't know where to set up practice. Maybe we should go to Australia for a year just to locum and just do some, traveling. And that's what we did. That took us there right after graduating, took us there to Australia. And guess what? 20 years later, had 2 kids and just like literally spent some great times in Australia. So you never know where those doors lead you, right? And so my encouragement is like when you're in university, whether you're going to start a club or join a club, I think you should do one or the other. Do something. I was one of those students that you spent all day from like 8 o'clock to like 4 or 5 p.m. in classes. And then what I would end up doing is then I would stay till like probably 6 o'clock to like 8 o'clock, joining every club I could from Monday to Thursday. I joined the Thompson Club, I joined Motion Palpation Club, I joined like Activator Club, I joined freaking every club you can think of, right? Why? Exploration. I wanted to know who I was and who I was going to become. If I'm going to spend my life, at the time, I was thinking, this is going to be my life work, then I need to figure out what's going to work with me. I'm not going to just choose the very first thing and going, oh, Thompson, awesome. That's what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. Like that's not the time, right? The time is for you to explore. So for these clubs or these in school is the best opportunity to discover what you're about. For me, one of the most important things when I coach, clients and with chiropractors is you need, like the first thing I do is try to help them align their business. Okay, it's alignment. It's align their business to who they are, not what they've been told, not what they're supposed to do, not because what I tell you to do. I want you to align your business the way you want it to. Tell me why you want that, prove it to me, and then once we align, everything happens, like everything starts to begin to work because now you're vibrating at a certain frequency. When you're vibrating at a certain frequency, you start attracting people who are vibrating at that frequency. So just say you vibrate at 33 hertz. Guess what? People at 33 hertz are going to hear you loud and clear, but people at 34, 32, they're going to hear you too. But someone who's at 75 don't even know you exist, but that's a good thing. And I think so that's where you go align, and then you can go, once I know who I'm about, this is what my practice is about, then you can amplify it. Now you can take an amplifier with marketing, with branding, all those things we kind of been talking about. Then you can push that out into the marketplace, and the people who are in the 30 to 35 hertz range will hear you loud and clear, and the other people won't.
It's powerful. So traditionally, the profession has always said people are called to this profession. This project is really trying to say, hey, we're calling you to this profession, which is I believe, non-traditional in the context of chiropractic. Obviously, we want it to remain in alignment with who these people are, and we want them to get aligned before they go to chiropractic school. I think that in the absence of structure, which has perpetuated itself generation after generation, we get students coming in that are misaligned with why they're becoming chiropractors, and they may never be checked on their slipping and told, hey, get real with yourself. Is this your professional path or not? Are you clear on what chiropractic is? Because you're going in a completely different direction than you want to be going. I'm just saying that I believe there's a lot of students that you could relate to that get out of school or new docs in the field that you're working with that are quite honestly frustrated or have some buyer's remorse about the investment they made in their education. Can you kind of just talk about the culture of chiropractic as you've seen it over these last 20 years and how it's evolved and why you became a coach, and maybe just describe, this is a totally different question, but just describe a little bit about what it took for you to become a coach, like the professional training that you underwent after you stepped out of practice, and what that whole path looked like for you, just
Sure.
as having, yeah.
I think, from one of those, let's kind of go back to the original question, which is about, recognizing sort of, if you're disenchanted about the profession or even not sure like whether or not this is the right profession. I'm going to remind you what I said about the octopus, right? And one of the most key elements, I think, in the profession, I think you did mention like talked about like what are the problems in the profession that I experienced. One of the problems I experienced in the profession, which I didn't understand until much later, which was that there's a certain expectation within the profession itself, or within certain tribes of the profession, or within certain communities of the profession. And I've been part of a few, and I wasn't very indoctrinated to like, yeah, I believe in it, rah rah, like yes. And it was not until many years later that I recognized that sometimes some of those things sometimes cannot, is actually not healthy. I'm not saying that they're not good or bad. It's just like it wasn't necessarily healthy for me. Okay, I just wanted to state that. And the reason why it wasn't healthy is because I never, I fell into the trap of going, it's their expectation and I'm trying to live up to it. And I think that's where the disenchantment and the unsatisfaction comes in play, is when you start to do things for others. And this is just a general thing. There's nothing to do with chiropractic. This is just general. Like if you start doing something, you went into this career because your father told you to do it, or you're doing this because, maybe a guidance counselor told you to do it. Like that never goes well, right? If you've never done any exploratory work on yourself, I'm like, is this something that I want to do? If you never ask that question, then I think it's really important. So this is nothing to do with chiropractic. This is like any career or anything that you do, right? So I think it's really important for us to recognize is that the most important thing is to ask yourself the question, what are you about? Who are you? Now, I know that seems like oh yeah, but just ask yourself that, right? By the way, I don't have an answer to that. I'm 47 years old. I'm still asking that question, but that's the point. You never stop asking, right? I've changed careers so many times, or careers, but I'm still who I am. I'm still Laurence Tam. And so how I see chiropractic might be slightly different than how people see it. I feel if you choose chiropractic as a career path, or at least part of your career path, or as part of who you are, see it more like a vehicle to help you express who you truly are. Okay? Now, it doesn't have to be chiropractic though. Like, you could be a doctor, you could be a accountant, you could be a sports writer, right? But the point is, whatever you choose in your life, I think of these careers that we choose are just a full expression of who I am. Like if I never got exposed to chiropractic, when I was younger, maybe I wouldn't have known about it. Maybe I would have become, I don't know, a lawyer. But the key element is that I believe fundamentally, if I, have this sort of the tenacity and the characteristics that I have, still to this day, I've probably been the Laurence Tam lawyer, right? I would just been expressing it a different way. So I think of it this way: like the career path you choose is different types of vehicle. Sure, a Ferrari is going to get me to a certain place at a certain time, or a Tesla is going to get me, or a Honda. Like they're all vehicles to get me somewhere. And so choose it based on like, but you gotta first. The assumption is who are you and what are you about, and what do you want to do? Do you want to ride a bike? Do you want to walk, or do you want to take a fast car? Do you want to take a train, or you want to plane? Certain things are going to get you there faster. Something's going to be slower. If you walk, it's going to be slower, but you get to enjoy the path too. So I think the chiropractic I see is more of an expression of who you are. If you focus more on that, then all of a sudden you remove the expectation of any external people or society or tribes or community to expect you to behave in a certain way. That's the trap that I think most of us need to get out of, right? Because most people are falling into this trap and they can't get out of it because they never really question. So first of all, I would say, what are you about? What kind of chiropractor do you want to be? What kind of practice do you want to have? Understand that, test it to see if that's true. And if that's, once you figure that out, you're going to go wrong way, right way, whatever, but you're going to move towards something. And then that is where you should begin. Then from that point, then you gather more information to help you dive deeper into that. Chiropractic, there's so many different style of chiropractic. There's so many chiropractors out there. There's got to be bound to be at least one or a few people, a small tribe within that area that you're attracted to and vibrate that frequency and want to learn from, right? But you almost have to kind of go through the gambit to really figure that out. So my journey was through that, is to figure out who I was and what I was about. Even in life, it's really difficult to kind of go against the grain, go against what you're used to. But that takes courage, right? And that's what I'm encouraging you. You got to have the courage to ask yourself, who are you and what you're about, and have the courage to going, I'm gonna take the path of what I feel is right, rather than just fall into the trap of how other people expect you to behave and judge you for it. That's tough.
Absolutely is very tough. And I would argue that chiropractic is a profession that encourages self growth, self development, self awareness, self study, self mastery more than and it
More than any
counted the
other profession.
profession, huh?
More than any other profession that I know, absolutely, for sure. Like if you meet a chiropractor, typically they have done more work on themselves. Typically, not everybody, but they've done more work on themselves. And if it wasn't for chiropractic, I do not believe I would have gone through the self-development stuff that I'm interested in doing and have exposed myself doing. It's through chiropractic, because of the people that I met, has really kind of forced myself to kind of look through that, because the way the philosophy is outlined, right, inside out kind of philosophy, as a general term, it forces you to kind of look within yourself. Okay. And yeah, I 100% agree with that statement.
That's the perfect segue. Can you now dig deeper into like today, or at least in the last couple of years, what have you been passionate about? What are you focused on? How are you growing? What are you studying? Where is your focus at?
Yeah. So for me, like at the moment, I coach chiropractors throughout the world. So I got, clients, in Australia, UK, and the United States and Canada. My passion is that. My passion is, one of the major things I really recognize in chiropractic. I'm still in chiropractic, so I haven't left, right? I'm still a chiropractor, and I still believe in this profession. I still care for this profession, and I choose to stay here. I met a whole bunch of people here, and I explain what I do, and they're like, "That's a really specific niche." I'm like, "Yeah," because partly I still love this profession. I love what it stands for. I love to see this profession thrive. And the challenge I see in the profession is that people are struggling to express who they are, because the profession, like the idea of chiropractic to me, is beautiful. Okay. Like the lifestyle, it's beautiful. Practice can be beautiful. The problem people get, like, so the path is amazing, but where people get stuck with is the business side of things. Okay. They can't express this when they don't have this sorted. And fortunately or unfortunately, chiropractic is a business, because it's your if you made it a career or you make it part of your living, it's your job. So the best thing that Elizabeth Gilbert, who wrote Eat, Pray, Love, she explained this beautifully, and I use her analogy. So she says that in life you have to do something. Like in life we just do things, and there's four things, and anything that you do kind of falls into four categories. The first category is a hobby. Okay, things you do for fun. There's no expectation for you to make money or grow from it. It's just a hobby. For me, like it's like CrossFit. I just go to CrossFit. I'm not trying to be a champion. I'm not trying to be an athlete. I just like getting fit, and I just love having fun in the community. It's a hobby, right? Some people might be writing, some people might be fishing, whatever. It's a hobby. You're not trying to make anything out of it. The second thing is that it's a job. So there's certain things that you do for a job. Why? Because we need money, right? We live in a world that requires money, not because of money. Money because we need to create value so that we can get value, so we can take that value and exchange that value for food and shelter, right? So it's a job. You might not love your job, you might not even like your job, but you do need a job, right? You need to do something to kind of earn, because that's how we live, right? So it's like that part. The third is that if you like your job enough, you might want to make it a career. Okay, and that's what we've been talking about. You might want to make it a career. Okay, so yeah, some people might not like chiropractic. You might see it as a job, and you might not like it, but you might still need to do it until you find some other job to replace it, right? But some people love to make it a career, and career is obviously you master it, and that's what I'm dedicating my life for. Then the fourth thing she has, something you could do is it's a calling. Something calls to you. Okay, and you can see that the most successful chiropractors in the world, they see it as a calling. Okay, and that's not even just chiropractors. Anybody who is really good at what they do and great at they're successful, and when I say successful, not in terms of money, success that they're at peace and they just love. It's not work for them. That's a calling for them. Okay, so those are the four things. And so using her example, she was a writer. It used to be a hobby. Then she found out it was a calling. She just wrote every day. And then when she finally got her book signed, the first book she got, it then became a job. Right? So recognize that callings can be a job, because it now pays the bill. She was doing something else before, and she no longer had to do the other thing, because now this provides for her, and that becomes her career. So like we can swap those moments into any of those four categories. My point is that in life we need to see how that's how it works. And then in chiropractic, we do have something amazing. We also have to see it as a business, because without the business, you can't do this. You can't express this. So you got to make sure running a practice has to have that business skills that you have to have. And so my passion lately in the last couple of years is really seeing the struggle. Why people struggle is because I would say 90% of the chiropractors become chiropractors because ultimately got into it because they want to help people, which is this side, right? They truly have this insatiable desire to want to help people. They might have lost it over the years, but that's what they really got in there for. I often remind people to remember, like, why did you get in? When you first graduated, how did you feel? But the thing is that they have to take care of this side, okay? Which most people suck at because it's never taught in school, right? So what you got to recognize is that you need to have profit, okay? Profit isn't about making money. Profit is about making enough more money so that you can drive your mission forward, right? That's what a profit practice to me is. I define a profit practice as make the profit so you can drive your mission, which is help more people. Without more profit, you're doing a charity, and usually charities will fail because you don't have enough of this, so you can't even provide for yourself, which then you can't provide here. And so those are the things I need to kind of get to. And then the second thing is that once you got on profit, then I want people to have freedom. I want you to get to a point where you want to practice because you want to, not because you have to. Most people are stuck in their practice or their job or their careers because they have to, because they have to provide, because they have a mortgage, they have kids to raise. All these things are stuck now. Now they're stuck. That's never fulfilling. That's never powerful. When you're stuck in a position or stuck in a country or stuck in your city or house, that's not great. There's no way you can provide the best care possible when you're stuck in here and locked into and jailed in your mind. So my passion has been helping people get to profit practice and freedom practice as soon as possible so they can actually do more of this, because for me, the impact that I get to put out in the world, which is, whatever it is, that's just my desire, is partly because I want to help people do more of this. Therefore, their life gets better, but the people they impact is massive. So therefore, that I feel like I'm indirectly helping those people too.
So what kinds of trends, I'm sure as a coach and somebody who's paying attention to the profit side of a practice, you have to recognize that there's patterns that you're seeing consistently. If you could group maybe 2 or 3 of your client groups that you see that you work with into like where they're at in their path and what they're struggling with, and what tends to be the challenges that you help them overcome, that would be really helpful.
Sure. Like most of my clients are usually people who own their practices. I do have a couple of associates, but all the way to a variety range, single practitioners to multi practitioners, multi doctors practice, to a couple of my clients own like 10 plus, 10 to 15 practices. So they all kind of vary. And the common theme amongst all of these people and all the chiropractors I coach, from no matter where you are in the world, it really kind of comes down to, if you want to become successful, for profitability and freedom, it really comes down to, I think, 3 things. Number one, it just comes down to you. It's like, how much do you want it, and how? And I'm saying, and that doesn't mean like someone who's like constantly just starving for it. No, like I think there's needs to be an internal desire to want to be successful or to want something bad enough, right? And I'm not talking. Not everybody's goals are going to be the same. I don't care if you want half a million practice or $1 million practice or 10 million. I don't care. What I care about is that what you really want, and tell me why you want it. Okay, because that is more important to me than where you're going. It tells me like I need to know your why. So your why has to be big enough, and you have to have that characteristic to willing to work for it, right? So I think that's really important, because hard work pays off, but you also have to have the patience, right? Willingness to learn and willing to make mistakes, willing to fail, all those things. I think the second thing that I think is really important to create success and more profitability and more freedom is that you have to have a right team. You got to recognize your own strength. You got to recognize what your superpowers are, you know, which means, right, that you're going to have a kryptonite, which means you have a bunch of weaknesses. There's, a friend of mine, Taki, who always talks about like, you should be great at the 1%. And you should spend 99% doing the 1%, right? And delegate the rest of the 99% to someone else. Right? If you can create that, that's freedom, right? Because just imagine, like, how much joy do you get when you get to do something you love to do? When you do something you love to do, it's not work. There's no time. You don't care. It's just blissful. You get more energy. You get so much energy from doing things you love, right? But where do people struggle with life? When they start doing things they hate, but they know they have to. Maybe it's accounting, maybe it's your bookkeeping, maybe it's like, putting out the garbage or whatever it is, right? So the freedom to get to like, how do you spend more time doing more time doing the thing that you're really great at, that 1%, you know, I'm only good. I'm not that great. I'm not that smart. Like I'm only pretty good at like a couple of things. In practice, I will say, in practice, I was good at two things. Okay. One, I was the best adjuster in my practice. Okay, I'm not gonna say that, right? I was a great adjuster for my practice and getting people as well. And the second thing, I was a great educator. I was a great educator to educate chiropractic to my patients. Those are the only two things in my practice that I did well. Those are my geniuses. Everything else I was excellent at, incompetent at, or maybe just okay at. Though all those things I delegated to everybody else. So I spent about 4 years, 5 years building my practice, just doing that. So I only do the two things. When I show up for work, I did those two things, and that's it. Everybody else took care of it. Paying the bills, someone do that. Doing whatever phone calls, someone's doing that. So I try to scale all of that. When you can do that, I think that is freedom. Now, let me add you the third, communication. Okay. You need to learn how to communicate. You got to be a great communicator. That doesn't mean you have to speak well. It doesn't mean you have to be a great orator. It just means that you need to learn how to communicate. You got to communicate authentically to your style, but you also need to be able to get the stuff out of here in your brain and get the heart piece of like the service that you want to do for people. You got to marry them and you got to put it into words. You got to put it into communicate in words that and emotions. It's not just words, right? The emotions, and express it in a way that the other person understands, right? What that entails, though, it means that in communication, you need to require to learn how to read people. You need to understand whether they get it or not. You need to understand that they don't understand, and you need to change analogies. Like all of these things are part of communication. So I think those three things, the hunger, desire, the why, you know, the communication, and also a great team to support you, all those three things combined helps you create the success that we're talking about.
Awesome. If you could just speak to that college or that chiropractic student that's in clinic right now about the personal finance, setting things up strategically for yourself to actually, because I believe we consciously give so much with chiropractic. We work on refining our technique. We work on how we're going to communicate and how we're going to take care of people over an extended period of time and build relationships and build our practices, but we very unconsciously receive money and we don't really know how to manage our money. And most of us have never, I'm not asking you to give financial advice, right? This is not financial advice. However, if you were giving advice to a college chiropractic student, how can you kind of help bring them up to speed on what it's actually like to receive money? Because so many people have never really actually started to receive money and have money growing in their bank account and have profit. I'm just curious because this is one of my bigger frustrations with just kind of my experience not being given a perspective of like, hey, you're going to be an entrepreneur. You're not an employee. So you're not getting a 401k necessarily in the traditional sense where your company matches it and this and that. I'm just curious what you did or what you recommend people do, or maybe you don't even have recommendations, but you just want to open their eyes to all the sides of being a business owner.
I could spend months talking about this. This is like what I'm really interested in. So you have like all these ideas are coming through. So I don't know where to go with this, but I do have some thoughts. I'll do some quick thoughts,
Give me
which we
some
can.
details too, though. I definitely
But
would
yeah,
love
no,
to.
but then I'm going to dive into one specific detail of which I think is going to be important. So I think overall, like here's some highlights, right? And you guys can think about what I'm sure I'm happy to answer any questions later on. Number one is like save more than you think you need to save. When you're coming out as a student, you know, when you graduate, I would just live like a student, continue living as a student for as long as possible. Don't go out and buy the next sexiest car right now because you think you have earning money. Trust me, like learn to save money, learn the impact of saving, and then learn to invest, and then increase your expenses as you actually accumulate. The other thing is think abundantly. You know, like you just got to remember, like although you're living right in scarcity, think abundantly. I think it's pursuing better than you are. Don't depend on anybody. Right, what you mentioned about having a job, like just because you get a job or just because you get 50%, like stop thinking like in those terms. Like learn, utilize that first 2 to 5 years of the first 2 to 5 years as growth. You know, like I graduated when I was 27, and I thought of myself, and I know it's as stupid as that sounds. Like I remember thinking, a 27-year-old baseball player is at the peak of his career, right? I'm like, okay, I'm gonna take that analogy. I'm like, I'm at the peak of my career right now. I got the next 5 years to sort out my life. I was married at the time, no kids. I'm like, all right, I'm gonna spend 27 to 32 to just go for it. I don't have any kids, no mortgage. I just went after it. And I go, after 5 years, I'm going to slow down and go, then I'm going to take an evaluation. How hard do I want to work? Do I want to continue working this hard? But I'm going to be in a financial position where I can go, I get to choose that, right? I think that's when because as you get older, I'm 47, so whatever you take away from me, whether I'm old or young to you, but at the end of the day, as you get older, your energy decreases, right? You're not for everybody. For me, like at least you start to recognize like you only got so much. But when you're a 20-year-old, man, you got all that firepower and you all got piss and vinegar. You might as well leverage the hell out of that, right? So, but I want to dive into one specific thing, what you mentioned about value. Okay, so you're right. Chiropractors are givers. We have built our whole entire life to want to be in this profession because we're in service of people. We've been told to be in service of people. The problem being in service of people is that you're too humble to be able to receive. But I want you to remember something. 2 points here. One is, if I gave you a gift, okay, Ben, I gave you a gift right now and you go, I don't want that. No, please don't give that to me. What are you doing? Because you're just being like, I'm being humble not to receive it. What you're doing is that you're actually turning down something I'm offering to you. Okay, so what you need to start to recognize, you need to receive. You need to learn. In order for you to give, you need to learn how to receive, because you give because you get the benefit of someone receiving your help. Well, if you're not taking people's gift, you're doing them a disservice. So that's lesson number one. Number two, I know we're kind of short on time, so I'm going to speed this up. Most important thing is that when you graduate, you need to recognize the value that you actually are creating. It's not about money. You're not receiving money. You're receiving value. And we have to put a number figure on that. But what I would love for you to do as an exercise, I don't have time to go through this, but I want you to take a piece of paper, and I want you to ask this question. I don't know how much adjustment is where you are, but let's just say we call it $50, just to kind of make this easy. Whatever it is, $50, $60, $80, whatever. When you receive that, okay, what is the patient getting in return? Okay, because money is just value, right? It's a piece of paper. We just go, this is what its value, right? We just agree this is a $100 bill or this is a $50 bill, whatever. We all agree on what that value is, but inherently it's just a piece of paper, right? But so when they exchange it, when they give that to you, what is the value giving? And I want you to write out that list. Now, the key element is that I want you to do not stop writing until that page is full. And you're gonna get stuck after 10. They're like, oh, I'm not ideas, and you're gonna start having. I'm talking about like improving people's productivity, increasing their sex life, their improving their immunity, their nervous system. Obviously, getting rid of someone's pain, functionality, being less grumpy with their kids. All of these things, right, are there if you look deep enough. But when you finish the list, you start to realize, I'm like, all that for $50? Yeah, hell yeah. That's what you're delivering. So you're 10xing. Every time you adjustment, you start to realize, like, I'm 10xing, if not more, to this person instead of that $50. So that $50 is cheap, right? Then I want you to add, how much money did you spend on college? Okay, answer that question. I know you guys, most people are probably watching this in America. I want to answer, times it by 4 or 5, whatever. I want you to, how much money did you spend, right, through college to earn that, to get that degree, to the right to practice, okay? I don't know what it is, Ben. You might be able to tell me, maybe 100,000, 200,000, maybe even more. Okay. All right. Add that. And I want you to factor in housing costs, food costs, right? Like all those things that have to do because maybe not at home. So you have to go travel somewhere. You have to live. Add that cost. Now even maybe $500,000, right? Now think about if you didn't go to chiropractic college, what would you have done? Maybe I would become a massage therapist. Maybe I would work for someone else. And you would have got a job, so like say $40,000, okay, on a year. Okay, multiply that by 4, just say you took 4 years. What's $160,000 of lost income that you didn't earn, right? Because you went to school, because you invested in yourself. Add that cost to that $500,000. Now you're down like $650,000 or whatever, right? That is the value you're providing for people. That's what you got to recognize. I'm exchanging that $50 for that, and I also invested over $600,000 or $500,000 or $1 million in myself to be in a position to earn. Okay, you haven't earned a single dime yet. Just you have to can you imagine if I put in $500,000 in Bitcoin, I better hope that I'm going to get a return out of that, right? Or if I invest $500,000 in a business, I hope that I'm going to get a return out of that. But the difference is in this case is that I'm not relying on other people to earn that. I'm relying on myself. I'm betting on myself. I put the $500,000 on me, right? And therefore on me, now it's on me. So it's actually about it's what work I put in. So I always tell students, the work begins when you graduate. Yeah, I know it's hard. I know you worked for like 27, 40, 24 years or whatever, 27 years to get to even this point of having this piece of paper that says you can practice. I know that it's hard, but I'm sorry to say, work begins now, because now you're in the first time in your life where no one tells you when the next exam is, no one tells you when the next test is, no one tells you what to study. Now it's all on you. And that's challenging. That's probably one of the toughest things that people have to transition to becoming an adult, is to recognizing, because we spent all years, like since 4 years old or 5 years old, someone's always told you when the next class is going to be. And it's for the first time you have to do this on your own. So you bet on yourself. So now you have to make it work and make that investment work. So just remember that.
Thank you so much for your time. I want to honor your time. You have somewhere to be at this minute, right?
Yeah, I can stay for like 5 more
Oh,
minutes.
5, 10 more minutes?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
cool. Sweet. What's your vision? Where are you going? What's possible with how you're honing and directing your energy in this lifetime? If we're just being creative, if you could get creative, what's your vision for the profession? How would you like to see our profession change and mold itself, or how would you imagine that it could reach its potential, right? Because we always talk about how we want people to reach their potential,
Yep.
but we don't really talk about how we want the profession to look when it has reached its potential.
For me, the profession, okay, I'll try to be frank. One of the main
Yeah.
things I think the profession requires right now is it's acceptance. Now, it's no different than society at the moment. Like, I think that, for the 20-25 years I've been in this profession, it's been had clear delineation of what camp you fall into. And as I got more and more into chiropractic, I realized like that's not really helping anyone, because as soon as you identify or be part of something, then you're not of this. And I think more acceptance is needed, because I feel like society, there's left, right, or whatever you want to call it, on one side and another side, but there's most of us are actually in the middle. And if you don't identify with one side or the other, then all of a sudden the people in the middle get lost. I love to want to talk to these people. I want to help these people to understand that, hey, you're in the right place, right? You're in the right place because this is where you need to be. But you got to figure out what you want. Stop worrying about what anybody expects you to be. You got to be you. And I love to help more people enjoy that. And here's why. My long-term thinking is this: if I get to help these people, which is the majority, build or be able to figure out who they are, they have a better opportunity, increase the odds and probability of creating greater success and probability and freedom practices. Well, in turn, which means that they're helping more people. And in turn, which means that more and more people are going to love chiropractic because they're helping all these people. And because they love chiropractic, we're going to increase the percentage of people who actually utilize chiropractic. And if you do it right, then all of a sudden the shift of the numbers of people utilizing chiropractic, and which means that if we're able to do that, then health of our society increases. And if we can increase this health of society, then we can solve better problems. That's sort of like my answer to where my vision goes, and that's why I'm sticking with what I know best. I love to
Can you
teach.
really
I love to coach.
succinctly describe what WCCS is and what your ability to impact maybe the profession or the student culture could? Because I just would love for you to introduce WCCS. I never got you to touch on that. I heard that you said you were the president of it. Touch on,
So that was when I was a student. So that was like 20,
but
25
this is
years
who
ago.
you're talking to right now. Is people that are
Yeah.
students. So I'm just
So
curious.
like the World Congress of Chiropractic Students was, I think it's still around. I'm sure it's still around. And its organization is a club that, each school would have. They get together once a year. Well, I guess pre-COVID, I'm sure they will continue to do that. They get together and they host a congress where various schools come together from various backgrounds. You got someone like Life College to people from National to like, oh, I'm not even sure that's what it's called anymore, but like, all these variety of different philosophies, and they come together and you basically debate and have conversations to try to move the profession forward from the student level. Now, did we ever make an impact? I don't know. I have no idea. I don't, because it's something I never kept track on. But I do know is that it made an impact on each other to kind of find respect, right? Respect for each other. And this is where the comment I made is about, I think in order for us profession to move forward is that we need to have mutual respect. But I think that there's so much room for chiropractic to have various types of chiropractors in it. Whether you're mechanistic or vitalistic or whatever, I think there's room for everybody, right? Because trying to make a vitalist chiropractic being mechanistic, because that's the preferred way, or a mechanist to be a vitalist, is a wrong way approach. That's never going to happen. right? It's almost like trying to make a vegan eat meat. Like that's never going to happen, right? And you can rationalize all you want, but if someone's committed to that path, they're not going to change because maybe that's fundamentally who they're supposed to be. So I really believe it's more about like allowing someone to become the better version of themselves and be the full potential of who they are. And if we do that, we have a chance at this profession. My worry about the profession is that, yeah, we have been infighting for as long as I've been in the profession for 25 years and then longer. The more we do that, we are losing ground to other things. Something else will pop up. And I believe with technology, with everything else, we need to start thinking about is where's the technology heading, and will it eliminate us? Now, I know the fundamentalists will be saying, there's no way, chiropractic is I get it. But that's not how you do business. In business, you need to always think about how are you being disrupted, right? I'm sure the taxi company says, hey, man, we got this good until Uber came around, right? Hotels, Airbnb, right? Blockbuster, Netflix. These are just 3 examples where those industries have been disrupted. If I was Netflix, Uber, or Airbnb, guess what they should be thinking? What's the next disruption? How are we going to be disrupted? But that's really hard because when you're that big sometimes or that successful, it's really difficult to think that you're going to be out of business. But that's exactly what happens, right? You got to constantly look at what's going to disrupt chiropractic, where it's going to be heading, what can change it. Is the technology going to be a point where they no longer need us? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that.
Well,
But we should explore it.
really quickly, what I hear in that statement is we should almost be on a defensive posture of figuring out how we're going to be disruptive. And a lot of what this project is all about is how can we be on an offensive position of how can we be disruptive. And I think that asking new questions to how do we disrupt a high school campus or a college campus with chiropractic, improving people's health and well-being in an environment which is typically very unhealthy. So I'm curious, last question, if you're talking to a student who's at the end of their pre-chiro program and they're looking to do a capstone project, kind of a thesis or an independent study, what are some prompts that you might be able to give to them that can help them really prepare themselves or just go deeper with how they can leave a legacy or be disruptive in their own way while they're on
Sure.
fire there?
So I'm going to address that first statement you kind of made. I don't think it's defensive. I think it's important to look at those, start asking those questions around what is going to disrupt us so that you can be, or we can be the ones who actually be offensive to be the one who disrupts ourselves, right? Does that make sense? So it's not like defensive, like, oh, got to protect us. No, it's like, you got to be the first one. Like if Blockbuster knew about the streaming thing, but they just weren't, they just think, oh, no one's going to disrupt this model. And that's why they let that slide. Kodak is a perfect example of a company who invented digital cameras, right? Who shelved it because they didn't want to lose their money from processing film. And then all of a sudden, we all know the story of that. So I think we need to ask those tough questions so that we can be the ones who lead it rather than being disrupted by some third party who doesn't even care about the legacy of what our profession is. To go back to answer your question around what kind of project to think about, I think, I don't know if I'm getting the context of the model that they'll be doing, but I think one of the most important things is about, I guess how to answer this would be looking at your lifetime. What do you, is it a personal project? Sorry, I'm not understanding the project.
It is a personal project. You have 3 months to do anything you want to do that's semi-related to like this path you're taking to becoming a chiropractor one day.
Okay. So for me, I would be looking at a couple of questions I'll be exploring is, what are my, similar to what I've already been talking about. What are your skill sets? What are you genius at? What are you really gifted at? What do you love doing? Because there's some path there, because now I'm making it individualistic. Because if this is your project and this is what you're going to do, you better do something not because what someone else told you to do. You're going to be doing something because it's actually within your skill set and something you're really great at. I think that's important to kind of answer. Then I would look at the legacy you want to create. Well, that's very personal too, right? Your legacy is going to be different than mine, and mine's going to be very different than Ben. There's no right or wrong. It doesn't have to be right. I think whatever legacy you want to create is start with going, what's the bigger picture? What's the bigger why why is that important? So for me is, mine's impact. I really do want to create impact, but when I say impact, you might think of a number. My number may not be the number you have in your mind. It doesn't really, I gone to a point in my life where I don't really care what you think the number is. I care more about what I think that number is. And, as long as I feel like, to be honest with you, I've gone to this place where if I've helped one person in my life, like if I die today, knock on wood, of course, right? If I had to move on at some point, and if I was able to shift and change someone's life for the better, and their life became better, um, then I've done my job, right? I think the universe, we talk about how long we have our existence, and we put this pressure on ourselves that we're so unique and we're so different. I was reading this book today, and it just talked about that, which is like we're so different, so unique that we're supposed to like create this massive change, and we're supposed to leverage everything out of it. But the reality is that we're so insignificant, like in this universe and time frame. We just got to remember, like, not to almost put too much pressure on ourselves to make this huge difference. I think our one of our jobs, our fundamental jobs, which I learned like a long time ago, like 25 years ago, one statement was, you know, I've always fallen in love with it. I still kind of believe it to this day, is that we are a spiritual being living a human experience, and whatever that means to you, I think that's important. And if that means that you want to go out and start 100 practices to go change a community or a country, go for it. If that means that you want to open a small little practice in some country, in a small country town, and help that community of 1,000 people, go for it. I think that it resonates to like what you are about, and this goes back to the fundamental question: what do you want to do? I'll sort of finish it here. It's like, I know a lot of people are asking, like, you asked me in the first question, like, what made you choose Portugal? Well, because I've done, like, when I left Australia, the decision to leave Australia was like, I've done enough. I've experienced enough. I needed something different. I'm challenging myself to go explore something else, because I'm like, I'm 47 years old. Doesn't mean I have to stay in Sydney. I don't have to stay in one place. I have like another 50 years of my life to live. Why stay in one spot if I had the opportunity to leave? And hence Portugal. Why Portugal? I've been here for 5 days, 5 years ago. My wife has never been here. She didn't even know what she was coming to. We just chose here for a variety of reasons, which I mentioned, weather and visas and stuff. But why not? That's the other question. Like, why not? And I think that's a good question for you to kind of, for those people who are thinking about this. Like, we also ask the whys, but also ask why not? Why not you?
Mhm.